Hello and welcome to my series of conversations with men and women whose ideas, vision and philosophy define our contemporary world. My guest today is both a prolific and a much applauded figurative artist, but he's much more than that. He's a sculptor, a poet, a collector of fans, a teacher, and a man who has, with great passion and commitment, promoted art and taken art closer to the people. I'm delighted to welcome Jatin Das. You have worked in many areas and forms of art, and most recently, you've said that you truly respected someone, or you respected far more a person who went out and bought a graphic or a drawing rather than a painting. You're still sort of generically identified as a painter. Why this distinction, and what's so special about being a drawing or doing graphics? And you've been one of the sort of few established artists who've also done solo exhibitions of drawings and graphics, and not just as an adjunct to your painting. So obviously it's a very important part of your identity and your work.
First of all, there are a lot of misnomers about everybody in our country. That one day somebody in Bhubaneswar said, when I was organizing a sculptors and potters camp, and somebody right at the high up said, but he's a painter, but he's organizing a pottery and sculptors camp. And we have this colonial academic system. And in our society, we have blinkers. And we look at everybody with that kind of a cubicle. And so he's a painter, how can he write poetry? He's a painter, how can he do sculpture? And so on. But this is a country where an artist is he who could design buildings in the ancient time, who paint, sculpt, and then do graphics and drawings and make toys for children and so on. This is the country. In the contemporary art scene all over the world, when we talk of Da Vinci and others, who's a holistic artist. And the word, when we say an artist is he who can do all this. Besides, in our country, we talk of 64 arts, where everything, diamond cutting is an art, hairdressing is an art, tailoring is an art.
But you've sort of drawn attention, in a sense, to the preeminence in your work, in your evaluation or judgment of the arts, of graphic and drawing, perhaps over painting in some ways, or perhaps just wanted to emphasize or draw attention.
Yeah, but it's known all over the world that anybody looks at an artist's work, first of all, they say it's a known expression, look at his drawing. If you want to look at an art, it's like when you talk of a musician or dancer, look at his, is it tal and lai is okay, you know? Likewise, the strength of an artist is a drawing. Strength of an architect is his structure, and so likewise. So it's widely known. But again, as I would, I'm these days looking at why things are going wrong in the art world, or in the society, or in the government, or in many, about certain areas about which I have no knowledge. But I think the crux of the matter is we have no grooming. We have the home as an institution is broken down. The schools are not imparting kind of knowledge which is relevant to the country and the ethos of the country. Yesterday, my wife Bidisha was showing her documentary film on the Silk Route in China. 16 artists were invited by somebody, and with luxury and comfort we went across China on the Silk Route. And somebody was interviewing me. He said, this young lady said, tell me, how is it China different than India? I said, Chinese are connected to their culture and tradition, and Indians are not. I mean, this is a very strong statement, but that's the truth, because somebody looking at the exhibition of Jamini Roy, a young lady said, where can I meet her? In the sense, Jamini, this young lady thought is a lady, and Jamini Roy died 40 years ago.
But yet, ironically, isn't sort of art fundamentally much closer to the people in India and in India's traditions? That there is art in everyday life, and you have done very interesting work in the rural areas, setting up an art center in Bhubaneswar, in taking it down to the elemental, in a sense. But the question really is that you've talked about grooming, training,
Yes.
and
Riyaz.
even when you were as a student at the JD School of Arts, you were already celebrated as a very promising, dynamic student with plenty of
Just hard work.
energy, speed, and passion. Do you despair at the fact that because suddenly art has become so commercial that very young painters already sell paintings and think that they have arrived, and that process of a lifetime of growth that people like you embody has in a sense ceased for them because they're already painters?
You see, in every discipline, when you cook a meal, the spices has to go into, get ingrained into the things. So the food has to cook properly to a point that you can eat it, otherwise it will be raw. Likewise, I think we use an expression between artists, the painting has to cook properly. The painting is not ripe. Or a musician has done riyaz when he makes a presentation, when he sings, the renderings. Likewise, I think everything has to cook. For that there is a time. And the time doesn't mean 2 months, not the linear time. But you see, Kumar Gandharv was a prodigy, was a great master when he was a young person. But everybody is not a genius, You see, when somebody's mother is being operated, they don't go to a second-year medical student to operate, right? You have to spend 5 or 7 years, you have to be an apprentice to some doctor, and then you operate. Likewise, you don't give an architect who has done second year of architecture to build a building. Likewise, many galleries are promoting and using the term called young masters. They're all hoping that one day all these young artists will become Picasso one day, and what they're investing now will rip, a lot of money. So there are a lot of young people in our country are very talented.
You're also sort of, very prolific. You paint a lot. Your painting has this, this quality of self-confidence, bold strokes, rather than the fine tinkering, in a sense.
I do fine work. I do splash of colors.
But it has a sense of dynamism. It has an energy, a sense of energy, and you do a lot of it. So is this cooking, the amount of time that you spend on a painting per se, or is it the larger process of evolution or the evolving of an artist, where you do one painting and you do another painting and you learn from what you've just done and you do something else, or do you just sit there and nurture this masterpiece?
There is no masterpiece ever made. First of all, that's a misnomer. I once said that everything I paint is not a painting. A painting is born sometimes, okay. And these are not cliches, this is a real thing. But you have to do your practice continuously, this is one. And every time, at least I can speak for myself, every time I approach a paper or a canvas as if I've not painted before, I don't repeat myself. Unknowingly, if I repeat, is something else. This is human. But what I'm saying is, it's not, when you use the word prolific, I don't take it very nicely, in the sense prolific meaning it's sort of churning out. Forgive me for saying. But I work regularly. I work about 10, 12 hours a day, every day. I do some drawings, I do some watercolor in the morning, and then once I get down to canvas, then I spend 6, 7 hours on the canvas, because it's a longer time to clean your brush, and you apply and you make coating. If you start at an area, you have to cover that area, and you have to every day, like everybody else, whether you're a scientist or a doctor or a writer, when you take up something, you have to pick up the thread next day, for which you have to round up every day. You have to finish a project, finish an area every day. So this is one. The other is, what is of concern to me really, that in spite of the fact the paintings, etc., being sold at a very high price, etc., it doesn't excite me, although a lot of artists think that I'm being cynical. What is of concern to me, if there is an appreciation of art growing, if in every family, like in South India, they learn veena, they learn the chanting, they learn the mridangam, or Bharatanatyam or Kuchipudi. This is not how it is in the rest of the country. And I think the government and the society has failed in not imparting right kind of education, right kind of upbringing. That every child at home and in primary school should learn its mother tongue, should learn craft, music, dance, poetry, painting, you know, and should know his own context first. Somebody from Arunachal should know Arunachal first before he knows the rest of India,
We'll
and
come
so
to that.
on.
We'll come to more of that in a moment. You're watching a conversation with the painter, sculptor, poet, a man of many parts, Jatin Das. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to a continuing conversation with the artist, Jatin Das. You were just talking about the need for a broad-based artistic sensibility, an artistic refinement. What is this artistic sensibility that
I wouldn't use the word artistic, but I use the word creative, and which is grace, caring for plants, caring for fabric which is produced by weavers with a lot of... A weaver in our country gets maybe 15 rupees a day or 20 rupees a day labor, but he puts in heart and soul and sweat, you know, in making that thread and the weave and everything carefully. If you look at a Mangalgiri sari, the border of Mangalgiri is so beautiful, and I give this example to a lot of young artists. If you can understand the use of color in Mangalgiri border, then you will become an artist.
But people would argue that, you know, sort of art as is currently practiced, and you're critical of it itself, but I'm just looking for you to elaborate on it, that sort of in Sotheby's and Christie's and or the equivalent of it in India isn't really adding to that process of refinement that you're talking about and that you seek.
Yeah.
And I think that what you're really saying is perhaps that, you know, it is art that makes us more compassionate, it makes us more sensitive to other people, to our environment. It's a sort of, it's a lubricant that heightens, reinforces our humanness in some ways.
Yeah. You see, as an artist, what I do is my personal thing. But if I'm talking of the country or the society at large, I am looking for a kind of aesthetic sensibility in the society. What in Sanskrit would say kalatmak bodh, you know. So that is diminishing, which was there, which is diminishing, and is becoming a society. If you travel to the west or to the east, and you suddenly find South Asia is very crude and rough in all its endeavor. Now, coming back to your question about auctioning houses. There are innumerable auctioning houses now opened up in India. The Indian auctioning houses like Neville Tully's Oceans and Sotheby's and Christie's. 2-3 days ago there was an auction in Dubai because it's a place of money and everybody bought.
You had an exhibition too.
Yeah. I had a recent one-man show, which is the first one, which is still on. The gallery is showing, it's doing well.
Was it financially rewarding? I mean, ultimately I know that you have been very eloquently talking about how you know, the moment a painting sells is a moment of sadness for you, and that you're not driven by making money, and I think your passion, your commitment, your lifestyle demonstrates that. But what is your relationship to all that is happening, the commercialization of art?
You see, that's what I was trying to say. You see, in one hand, many of my artist friends say, oh, Jatin, you should be happy that, you know, painters are selling at high price. You see, frankly, if somebody's painting is selling at a 1 crore or 20 crores, it doesn't upset me, or I don't get elated either. What my concern, as I said earlier, if there was appreciation of art growing. Now, if you go to a music concert, even today, somebody say, "Arey, kitna badhiya gana gaya, eh? Or kya ye rag ko, this particular rag that the rendering was so good." Today, not a single person is saying, "I saw a painting which was very beautiful," or his drawing or his painting, the sculpture is so powerful.
Well, you haven't listened to all the things I've been saying about your work.
No, but everybody is talking about everybody's work, in what price it is sold. The other day in Indian Express a couple of weeks ago, there was an article of a young artist in Bombay, and it said that he was living in Kurla. He has got a large flat in Malabar Hill. And why should the people know? We're talking of an artist. If you're talking about Kumar Gandharv or Bhimsen Joshi, that in how his work is evolving. And I think it's very vulgar for a media to talk about some artists selling at high price. It is good that the people are now talking of painting because of price. A lot of well-to-do families, children are going for art because there's money in it. There will be money also selling aloo, potatoes if you sell. But that's not the reason. That's not the reason you go to art.
Share with us the processes of being an artist, of creating art, creating your drawings and painting, and what it does to you as a human being. What value does it add for you, for the unfolding of your life?
Even though I've been painting for many years, I've given interviews, but believe me, I'm at a loss to say what does painting do to me, because I'm not good enough in anything else, number one. And I think I'm talented to work in terms of painting or sculpture, whatever I'm doing. And I'm frankly beginning to paint. I'm starting my work over, I'm now 64, and I think I'm starting to paint. And there are many areas that I haven't touched. There are many things that I want to do I haven't done. And frankly, out of desperation, I feel you need 3-4 lives to be an artist. Not in one life is not good enough. And you see what I feel sad, there are many artists today, the younger ones, copying from the West. This country has Mahabalipuram, you've got Hampi, you've got Konark, you've got Khajuraho, you've got Ajanta Ellora, you've got Alchi murals in Ladakh. You name any form of, painting or mural or architecture or sculpture, any form, any kind of rendering exists here. And it is not embedded into
in a
art
sense
curriculum.
that your painting carries so much of the human predicament, more the sort of the human, the interpersonal human predicament, man-woman relationships. You work a lot with form. There is some dimension, some resonances in your psyche, in your memory, in your experience that find expression through these forms. Is there sort of the satisfaction of catharsis? Is there the sort of the joy of an aesthetic? What is the gratification? What is the high? What is that orgasmic moment that you get from art?
There are very rare moments of satisfaction, for momentary, very short-lived. You finish a work and you like it, it finished, or you're not happy and then you continue working on it. But there's no satisfaction of that nature ever, to be honest.
The process, the completion.
The process is the most important thing, and the process has to go on, and there's no finale. You see, if you are a politician, you become the Prime Minister, it's ultimate. If you are a sportsman, you top in the Olympic, it's okay. But in any creative process, whether it's science or arts, it's a never-ending process.
You're watching a conversation with the painter, poet, philosopher, sculptor, Jatin Das. We'll be right back after a short break. Don't go away. Welcome back to a continuing conversation with the artist, Jatin Das. I sense in the conversation that, each time I try to draw you into discussing you as an artist, you're drawn to an anguish about the external world, about what is happening around you, what is happening to art, it in some ways is how do I put it, a socialization, a social contextualization of your role as an artist, and going beyond the creation of works of art.
You see, when I'm in my studio and working, I don't think of all this. Please understand. While I'm here outside my studio, in a studio of yours, while we're discussing, when we're discussing this for viewers, we're discussing, I don't want to discuss myself, to be very honest. I would discuss myself with very few close friends, myself, my inner thoughts, or my work with close friends. But I strongly feel that we should discuss about issues which are larger issues. But when I'm in my studio and painting, I couldn't be bothered about anything else in the world. Not even about my earlier work, not even how a critic looks at my work or how a buyer looks at I don't think of any of this. When I work in isolation 100%. But while we're talking about issues of art, art education, art in society, art in day-to-day life, for instance, Nehru talked about 2% of the total cost of building should go towards acquiring of art. Okay? This was in early 70s or whatever. And this was not taken up, at all. And the idea was not beautification, but the idea was give opportunity to traditional and contemporary painters and sculptors and muralists to do, and the architect should think right at the beginning, at a conceptual stage. Would you believe that, like Mexico, this country could have had thousands of murals with our building? Howard Hodgkin has done one at the British Council. And few other artists have done here and there. Hussain has done, Satish Gujral has done. But we have a lot of very good artists, because you can't do certain kind of work in the studio. If you get an opportunity, I did a mural in the Parliament. That was very good opportunity. But say the height of the ceiling was 9 feet. So my mural couldn't go beyond 7 feet. But if an architect conceived, it's very unfortunate that like Geoffrey Bawa was a great architect of the subcontinent, who died, was in Sri Lanka. Doshi, B.V. Doshi is a great architect, but the point is, we architects and artists haven't worked together in the ancient period in our country.
You've been very excited about the project in Orissa, the center that you're setting up. Again, an effort in precisely the direction that you're talking about.
This is my stupidity.
Why do you call it your stupidity?
Stupidity.
Well, tell us first, what is it that the center is going to go? And then we'll talk about the stupidity.
It's called the JD Center of Art. Although it has the initials of mine, it doesn't stand for it. While I was doing the registration, the judge asked me, what is the name? And I said, I flustered. And I said, I haven't thought of a name. So I said, JD. Anyway, so this center building, because the government of Orissa about 12-15 years ago offered me a little land to build a studio and to make a museum of my works. And then eventually about 8 years ago they gave me the land. Then by then I thought it would be silly to have a studio, and because the idea was that I go more often and I'm from Orissa and do something. Then I enlarged the scope, and I thought it would be a better idea, because in the process, in the last 47 years that I have been away from Orissa, I've accumulated a lot of antiquity books. So this is also shedding, meaning to give it away. I'm donating the entire collection. And now Doshi, B.V. Doshi, the architect, is designing it. I've got the land, and till today, in last 8 years, I'm spending my own pocket money from my painting for this purpose.
What is the objective? What do you hope to achieve, contribute?
It's not a teaching center. There will be, although, lack of a better word, the word museum, but museum not as a storehouse, but an ongoing center. It will have conservation, it will be the only art center in the country or anywhere which will have traditional and contemporary works. That means there will be a gallery for drawing, there will be a gallery for graphics, another gallery for watercolor, there will be a gallery for pankha, another gallery for handicraft and handloom, another gallery for media, material and tools in art. In every form of art in our country, in terms of visual and plastic art, all the tools I'm collecting for a museum, Then there will be 2 studios for artists to come, artist residency. From anywhere in the world, they can come and stay and work.
For you, art, as you've so often articulated, is an unfolding present in your life. There is no destination. It is a journey. As you grow older, has sort of creating an institution such as this or something else or beyond it to all your aspirations.
Yeah, you're right. Having plunged in, I have to swim across the river. That's the situation. But we have a trust, we have exemption of tax, we've got an advisory committee, and we've got bank account, we've got the land, we've got electricity and water on the land. We need 50 crores to build the art center.
Do you fear that this might sort of, compromise you in some way, that you might begin to look for money now?
No, I'm looking for money for charity, for building the center. And because we have exemption of tax, we've got foreign funding clearance, everything is clear on board, because these are many pitfalls. But as you rightly asked me, it is not frankly my job to do a center as an artist. But with this Boy Scout attitude, I thought, no, because I also genuinely believe it's not a job of an artist at all. But this country should have 10,000 private museums, which I'm very saddened to see that other than O.P. Jain in Delhi, Kelkar in Pune, and Mr. Nair in Kerala, there are no private museums. at all in the country. And the government, you know, look, what's the name? Jefferson gave his books. That's how become the Library of Congress in America came into being. Guggenheim Museum, all these museums are private donations, an endowment which set up the museums. So the government should give facilities and tax exemption to various people who can afford to set up little museums. In London, there are 200 museums. In our city of Delhi, National Gallery, Modern Art and National Museum and the Craft Museum finished.
So tell us, this personal passion, this social passion, it's coming together. You're only 64 years old, you know, 20, 30, 40 years of work ahead. What do you want to be
10
remembered?
years. Well, 5 years, 10 years, if we live longer, is good enough. Blessings. But the idea is, you know, I'm pursuing this, knowing well this is not my job. But because, as I said earlier, that I'm from Orissa, and because I've accumulated a lot of these craft and books and this and that, etc. And then I have a vision, because the kind of museums we have, these are storehouses and dead houses. I want an active center. And the third is traditional and contemporary together. And fourth is that everything is happening in the metros, and it should be in other places, like Bharat Bhavan was done in Bhopal.
Well, here's celebrating your work, both in the personal and the social sphere and dimension. Thank you very much. This has been a great honor and a great pleasure. Thank you. You're wonderful.